Thanks very much for being here, everyone. Welcome to USCOTS. My name's Allan Rossman. I'm one of the program chairs of the conference, as well as Kelly McConville, who's helping me to share the correct screen and not the incorrect screen. This is the opening session, as you probably realize. I want to start with a special welcome to first-time USCOTS attendees. We're especially delighted that you're here with us today. We hope that you'll find this experience to be welcoming, helpful, thought-provoking, and perhaps even fun. Those are the four things we're aiming for here. I want to start with a tiny bit of history, especially for those of you who are attending your first USCOTS. USCOTS is run by an organization called the Consortium for the Advancement of Undergraduate Statistics Education, CAUSE. Dennis Pearl is the director of CAUSE and has been since CAUSE was instituted almost 2 decades ago now. CAUSE began at Ohio State University, and it's now been housed at Penn State for several years. This conference, USCOTS, has been held in odd-numbered years since 2005. So this is the 9th USCOTS. The original people behind USCOTS were Dennis, along with Deb Rumsey, who was the program chair for the first 4 USCOTS conferences, and Jack Miller, who has been the chair of the Posters and Beyond sessions since the original USCOTS. This is my 5th year in the role of program chair, but I'm happy to say I've attended and participated in all 9 USCOTS. There seems to be something different about this one, though. I can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe those of you who have been to previous USCOTS can help me out here. Maybe it's that I have more gray hair than I did when I started this, but that's not a big deal. Maybe it's that USCOTS is happening in June this year. It's usually held in May, but that's not a big deal. Maybe it's the fact that today is Monday. The conference usually begins on a Thursday. Or maybe it's the fact that this opening session is early in the day rather than in the evening. Or maybe it's what I already mentioned, that Kelly McConville joined me as co-program chair this time. Kelly's been a huge benefit to the program, the organization. Every aspect of the conference has benefited from Kelly's involvement. You'll hear from Kelly at the end of this session and throughout the week. But even that isn't quite capturing what feels different this time. What is it? I think I might know. Inspiration just came to me. Maybe it's the fact that I'm sitting all by myself in a room in my home staring at my computer screen instead of standing on a stage at the front of a ballroom filled with hundreds of statistics teachers. Yeah, maybe that's what's different this time. I'm glad I put my finger on that. So this is the first virtual USCOTS. If you're familiar with ECOTS, ECOTS is also run by CAUSE in even numbered years. ECOTS, the E stands for electronic. So ECOTS has always been virtual. It was designed as a virtual conference. But USCOTS is meant to be in person. We really do regret that we aren't meeting in person. But on the other hand, we're delighted that many of you perhaps were able to join us because we're meeting virtually and might not have been able to attend in person. We've done our best to plan for a conference that still aims to be welcoming, to have engaging interactive sessions. We've even tried to plan for serendipity. One of the things I've enjoyed most about attending conferences over the years is the serendipity of bumping into people you haven't seen for a while or meeting new people who have similar interests. So I realize that it's an oxymoron to plan for serendipity, but we've tried a bit of that, and Kelly will be describing our plans for engagement at the end of this session. But enough about me. Let me ask some questions about you. And Bob, if you would please run the polls, that would be helpful to me. The first poll question is, how many USCOTS have you attended? Bob is asking the question. Please answer. If you've done Zoom polls before, you know how to do this. We'll give you another 5 seconds. Anyone else want in? It's a hard one. Let me end the polling. I can do that, it seems now. Let me share the results. Are you seeing the results? This is terrific. More than half of you are attending your first US COT, so that's terrific. Welcome again. Some of you, 6 of you, claim to have been to all 9. We are not going to ask for verification. We'll take your word for it. Thanks for being good sports and answering my question. I've got more questions. Let's go to question 2, please, Bob. Where do you primarily teach? Another 3 seconds. I'm going to end the polling, share the results. So the modal answer is a teaching-oriented college or university, but there's a good bit of variability there. So welcome again to everyone. Third question, please launch it, Bob. How much statistics do you teach? Let me end the polling and share the results. So the modal answer is teaching nothing but statistics. 42% of you answered that, but a good bit of variability there. One person has never taught statistics yet. Well, thanks for being here. We hope you'll learn something that'll be helpful when you do teach statistics. Let's go to the next question, please, Bob. How have you taught for the past 12 months? I'm going to be quicker to end the polling this time. 3 more seconds. Modal answer and a majority answer is online only. About 2/3 of you have taught only online for the past 12 months. Let's go to the next question. What time is it? It's a little bit after the top of the hour, but is it a little after noon for you? 11 a.m., 10 a.m., 9 a.m., something else? I bet you've never been to a conference before where the opening speaker said, what time is it? And expected people to answer for him. Let me end the polling. So most of you are in Eastern time in the US. Well, I shouldn't say most, pretty much 50% of you are in Eastern time in the US. A bunch of you in Pacific time are up early, so thanks for that. What else did I wonder? I'm kind of curious as to what the temperature is outside. Would you tell me that, please? It's pretty warm for a lot of you. More than half of you are in the 80s outside. Almost a quarter of you, it's already in the 90s outside. One of you said 50s or lower, so thanks for that. So I don't feel silly putting that category in the poll. What else am I curious about? Let's get to a technology question. Before this week, have you ever used Zoom? I'm not going to give you long at all for this one. Almost everybody has used Zoom before, but not quite everybody. A couple of you, literally a couple of you, have not used Zoom before. Thanks very much for venturing into Zoom land to be with us today. Let me ask a really, really, really silly question. Have you ever used the internet? Yes or no? Well, that's just there for a laugh. I don't know if it's working or not. That's the thing with virtual conferences. You don't know if your laugh lines are working or not. So I guess I'll just assume that they're working, but I'm not going to belabor this one. So this was just there for humor. Let me go to the next question. What's your primary reason for attending US COTS? Those are the only 4 answers I'm giving you. Had no idea people bet on this kind of thing. Let me close the polling, get your answer in if you want it in. 5 of you lost a bet, and that's why you're attending US COTS. I find that hard to believe. Most of you are here to improve your teaching of statistics, which is a very commendable reason to be here. And that's the reason we're aiming for in all of our planning of the program. For those of you who are here for the laughs, you'll be glad to know that I'll be done in a couple of minutes. I'm also curious to know, do you remember what the theme is for tough choices there? It's almost 50-50. Let me end the polling and save some time. Actually, the top one is running away with it now. The theme of US COTS 2021 is expanding opportunities. That's what the sessions are going to be about. Maybe not every single session, but a big majority, I think, of the sessions will address in one way or another the theme of expanding opportunities. The rest of this session is going to be about 5-minute talks addressing that theme. For the past several US COTS, we featured 5-minute talks. And we're going to do that again. We asked our 5 speakers to address some aspect of the conference theme. We purposefully left this very broad so they can talk about whatever aspect of expanding opportunities they choose to. Let me say, if you've never done a 5-minute talk, it's really hard. It's very challenging to organize and condense one's thoughts into just 5 minutes. Frankly, it's a lot easier to give a 50-minute presentation than a 5-minute presentation. But I especially appreciate the people that I'm about to introduce for agreeing to this challenging task. Let me also say we will be following USCOT's tradition and having our speakers present alphabetically by first name. It's just a coincidence that my first name starts with A, and I happen to like this ordering arrangement. Let me introduce our speakers now, and then we'll hear from them. Our first speaker will be Anna Fergusson, who is at the University of Auckland. You probably know Auckland is in New Zealand. You probably know that New Zealand is not in the same time zone as any of the time zones in the United States. In fact, it's a little after 4 in the morning on Tuesday in Auckland. So I especially appreciate Anna for being here live to present for 5 minutes for us. Our second speaker will be Frank Savina. Frank is at the Dana Center at the University of Texas in Austin. After Frank will be Jennifer Green. Jenny is at Michigan State University. Then we'll hear from Kathryn Kozak. Kate is at Coconino Community College in Flagstaff, Arizona. Kate is also president of AMATYC, the American Mathematical Association for 2-year colleges. Then we'll hear from Maria Tackett. Maria is at Duke University. Our final 5-minute speaker will be Rebecca Wong. Rebecca is at West Valley College here in California. Rebecca is also chair of the ASA AMATYC Joint Committee. So with that joint introduction, let me ask Anna to share her screen. I probably need to stop sharing mine first. So Anna, if you'll share your screen and go to it.
Kia ora tātou. I'm thrilled to be part of this conference all the way from New Zealand to have the opportunity to talk about data landscapes. My photo of cats here actually has very little to do with this talk, except that cats are curious, which is kind of a theme, but also I know that Allan Rossman loves cats too, so that's there for you, Allan. So I'm going to focus on the design or use of small tasks like weekly or homework, like lab tasks, the ones where you have a clear destination or learning goal, some sort of statistical method or application, and you then map out a journey, like a learning journey based on a sequence of questions or prompts. And your motivation for this journey is a data source like penguins. And typically this will provide a single data landscape for students to travel through. So all the students end up using the same data set for the task. There's lots of amazing benefits for just using one data set or one data landscape, mostly based on that you know what the journey will involve. You've been down that road before. Just in my teaching, I got to the point where I really was just unhappy at how little my students got to bring any sort of individuality to their data learning experiences. So I started playing around with this idea of data landscapes. So an approach where I could provide like the same sort of structured task, the same sort of kind of learning journey, but I could offer my students the opportunity to swap out the backdrop, swap out the background and choose their own specific data landscape. So I thought I'd show you some examples from my intro stats course. So first off, I've got drawings from the Quick Draw game. Students can choose one of the many objects that are drawn in this game, and they could do something like create a data set by sorting the drawings into different groups and then end up doing some sort of hypothesis test on that. Another great source of data is Spotify. Students can choose an artist that they're into, and then they can explore creating playlists using audio features determined by Spotify's own algorithm. At the same time, they're learning about k-means clustering. The YouTube data API is also an amazing opportunity for a data source. Again, students can use a channel of their choice. and then do a bunch of things. For example, they can explore how long it takes the first word to be spoken in any video, and that obviously leads to confidence intervals because they're using samples of videos, and they may think they've got a lot of time, but they don't have all the time to watch all the videos on the channels that they like. Another cool creative opportunity is to explore things like graphic design. By using the Google Books API, students can tap in and analyze the design of book covers on a subject of their choice, for example, psychology. I know exploring movie ratings isn't like a particularly new data landscape for us, but I like the idea that if they use an API like the OMDB API, that they can tailor their search for movies based on a keyword of their choice, e.g. star, maybe war, maybe cat. And in this last example, what starts off with students being asked to tell me what's your favorite meal that you like having with your family and friends, ends up with them predicting the cost to make that meal in a year's time using data on monthly food prices from Stats New Zealand, which is our government stats agency. So in this course, we've been using this approach. We have 12 weeks in a semester. I've managed to use 22 of these small investigation tasks. That means students visited over 2,500 different data landscapes, which is just amazing. And technology obviously drives these tasks. The students use both web-based GUI-driven tools, pointy-clicky software like Insight Lite, also apps that I've built, as well as code-driven tools such as R or scripts that I've embedded in Google Sheets. I'm totally addicted to these tasks. I can't imagine teaching without them now, and it's not just because they're fun, but also the reviews from the students are amazing. They're as amazing as this 5-star trip advisor review of the Waimangu Valley in Rotorua from a tourist from Toronto. So yeah, learning reflections get a big tick from me because I get to read and value feedback about the journey and not just assess students making it like to the destination. It's also it can feel a bit risky. You have to be totally okay with losing some control, but uncertainty is what we're all about, right? We're teaching statistics. It's all about structure and variation. So I think it's well worth the extra planning for the learning opportunities that these kinds of data landscapes provide students. And there's also this really extra mileage you can get out of this data because all the choices that students make, you can share back to them and let them know about the diversity in your class. For example, I had a task involving Google Translate and gender bias and animals, and my students were totally surprised that between 180 of them, they came up with 161 different animals. If you count unicorns, they thought they might have about 30. And also I was able to provide some statistical evidence that in fact, cats are the #1 animal. So yes, this conference is all about expanding opportunities, not just for our students, but also for us as teachers. And this is just one idea for doing that. And we're going to hear about so many more over the next few days. My advice is be adventurous. I've got some more ideas and the technology approaches we're getting started in this paper that I've written with Chris Wild. I've linked some of these slides, which will be shared later. But yeah, I hope you found something useful in all of this. Ngā mihi, and thanks again for this opportunity to share just a little bit about my teaching.
Thanks very much, Anna. Next, we will hear from Frank Savina. So, Frank, please share your screen.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate that. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Frank Savina, as Alan mentioned, and I do work for the Charles A. Dana Center at the University of Texas at Austin. For those of you that may not know, the Dana Center is an organized research unit within the math department at the university, and we are completely focused on equity, access, and excellence in math and science education. I am a mathematician by training, not a statistician, so I just want to put that up in front for you all to know where I stand. But having said that, I spend my time primarily working on developing curricula for gateway level math and statistics courses. So I spend all of my time thinking about what the classroom looks like. I spend all of my time thinking about what gateway level experiences look like. And I just want to take a moment to thank Alan and the rest of the organizing committee for giving me this time to think a little bit and share with you my thoughts on how we can expand opportunities for our students. As I think about the future, right? Before I think about that, I just want to share a little bit about what I see in statistics from my perspective. I want to give you all a big shout out. I want to just say that I'm really excited about the work that you all are already doing when it comes to creating active and engaging environments for your students. You are doing active learning. you are doing contextualized statistics, which is something I can't always say about my colleagues in mathematics, right? So when we think about the contextualization that you all utilize, when you pick the data sets that we just saw a little while ago, when you think about contextualization, that leads to what we know of as conceptual understanding, which leads to retention of information and hopefully better outcomes for our students. But I also want to take a moment to talk a little bit about the other benefits of what active learning brings for our students. So active learning for us demands that the teacher is not the focal point of the classroom, right? And when we think about active learning and we think about giving students opportunities to engage with each other, basically what we are doing is we are giving them voice. And that in and of itself is a very powerful concept. And I want us to kind of hold on to that as I think about what that means for expanding opportunities for students. When you give students voice, right, you are basically saying to them, your voice matters, your perceptions and understandings matter, you matter, the way you learn matters, and your culture matters. And that is very, very, very important to what I'm about to share next, okay? As I was sharing just a little while ago, I spend a lot of my time thinking about engagement for students. And so I had to create a little diagram for myself as I engage with lessons. And this idea of giving students voice looks like this for me. And I want you to take a moment to just kind of look at this diagram. The idea of creating an active learning and collaborative learning environment leads to giving students voice, which ultimately is in and of itself culturally sustaining. And that's very, very important for students that look like me. And I just want you to remember these things as we move forward today, okay? And before I continue with this, though, I want to share just a little bit of a personal story as to what it means to have to be in an environment that is culturally sustaining. I came to this country when I was 5 years old. I started school here when I was 5 years old. And yes, the normal stuff, right? I didn't know the language. It was a new country, blah, 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 blah. But one thing I think we often miss when we have different people coming to our country is that I had a different way of learning, right? It's something that I want you all to remember. We call that epistemologies of students. Okay, so my epistemology was not the epistemology that I walked into. And so what that created was a situation where I had to shift to an epistemology that was not my own. So when I was a kid, well, not when my daughter was a kid, we often tossed the football around, right? And when we would have conversations about what that felt like for me, what it felt like to have to switch epistemologies, I gave her a simple answer. I said, when I toss the football, I'm right-handed, and that feels comfortable for me. And I can toss that football really far and really accurately when I toss it with my right hand. What it felt like for me to have to switch my epistemology was to tie my right hand behind my back and toss that football with my left. Day in and day out, right? So it's important that we understand that our students come with different ways of learning that might not be our ways of learning. So with that in mind, right, when I think about expanding opportunities, I ask, how are we going to do that for our students? And that requires us to think about their ways of learning. And what we know is that we can organize ways of learning into two very broad buckets. And they look like this. Okay? There's this framework called integrated learning, on the one hand, which is typically associated with Northern Europe. With Hispanic indigenous cultures, integrated. Individuated learning is associated with Northern Europe. So there's two ways that we can kind of think about the ways that students learn. Now, these are very big, very broad frameworks. I am not going to be able to do them justice in these 5 minutes. But I'm going to just kind of show you two really quick pieces that stick out to me. And they look like this. This is integrated learning. This is a very simple description of parts, just parts. Remember, this is broad of integrated learning. I want you to just look at that for just a little bit. Then I want you to think about individuated learning. That's what it looks like. Just a small piece of it. So I want you to take a moment and I want you to ponder this and ask yourself, what is your own learning framework? Which one of these reminds you of how you learn and the way that you went to school. Feel free to drop that in the chat. I see some integrated. Both. Yes, I like that very, very much. Please keep on going. I'm going to go ahead and share a little bit more about these ideas here. As I continue, I also want you to ponder what school was like. What's higher education like? What does it impose on students? Is it an integrated learning framework or is it an individuated learning framework? Okay, so I'll keep on going with that. So expanding opportunities, how, right? I want you to think back to what I just said about football. I want you to I want you to think about expanding opportunities for students by giving them a chance to toss the football with their right hand. Right? Switch the way you teach. Give them a chance to experience their own learning frameworks. Right? So for us to expand opportunities for those students, it's up to us to think about and learn about different ways of knowing so that we can teach to students cultural strengths. So I just want to remind you all are doing great work. Build on that. You're already doing active learning. Take that one step further and start to discover how it is that students learn. And your classroom will change and your students will benefit for it. And I just want to thank you for my time today.
Thank you very much, Frank. Thank you very much. Next up will be Jennifer Green from Michigan State University. Go ahead and share your screen, Jenny.
Oh, there we go. I promise Frank and I didn't talk, but this is a great order, Allan. So
Alphabetical by first name never fails.
When preparing for this talk, I reflected a lot on what it means or could mean to expand opportunities. And I finally centered on a topic that is meaningful to me at this point in my journey. And I hope it can help frame our experiences during the conference this week and beyond. So in the next 4.6 minutes, we're going to get to explore the idea of expanding opportunities by thinking about how we might expand opportunities to listen. And by using this word listen, I'm not talking about just hearing. Instead, to me, listening means paying attention to another person and collecting the information they are sharing in whatever form they might be sharing it in. I think that making space for and truly listening to others' voices or perspectives helps build an inclusive community and expands opportunities for all. To explore this idea, I'd like each of us to sketch or envision in our minds what we think a statistician or a data scientist looks like. As you're doing this, what sort of characteristics or features are you envisioning and considering? Why? If your students were asked to do this, what do you think they might draw? Someone who looks like you? Someone who looks like them? Why does this even matter? Well, the truth is each of our many identities can shape how we see ourselves as a person and how that person relates to our conceptions of who a statistician or a data scientist can be. For example, as a traditional PhD student in statistics, I rarely thought about my age, given I started my PhD program right after earning my bachelor's and master's degrees. But my identity as a parent was ever present as I tried to navigate an academic world in which many of my fellow peers weren't yet parents. Was I, as a mother, captured in my own conceptions of who a statistician is? Are you captured in your conceptions of who a statistician or a data scientist is? Are your students And if they aren't, why not? What voices are missing in our classrooms, in our degree programs, in our profession, in our methodology, in our applications, and even at this conference? Furthermore, what voices are present, but maybe just not heard? How might we expand opportunities to listen to them? As an educator, some ways I get to listen to my students is by inviting each of them to write me a letter at the beginning of the semester, sharing who they are and how we as a class can support their learning. I then use this to help structure the course and foster an inclusive environment where the students have agency in their learning and get to reflect upon what they need to be successful. Another way I get to listen is by offering students choice and flexibility in how they communicate and share their understandings, such as through videos, songs, written reports, oral presentations, or their own proposed adventures even. And when I do this, I fully acknowledge that the assumptions I'm making about students when I give written exams limits my opportunity to hear multiple voices. But what other assumptions am I making? And what other voices am I hearing, but not listening to? As an educator, this is a continual journey of listening, reflecting, and learning that only hits the tip of the iceberg. And as we engage with one another this week and move forward on this journey, I encourage each of us to consider what's possible when I challenge current systems, conventions, and practices by re-envisioning and expanding opportunities to invite, value, and listen to other voices, not just in the classroom, but also in our other roles as editors, advisors, consultants, researchers. How then would we and our students conceptualize who a statistician or a data scientist is? Because ultimately, listening is an opportunity to learn, to innovate, and to grow personally, professionally, and as a society. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jenny. Next up will be Kathryn Kozak. So Kate, go ahead and share your screen. I mentioned at the outset, Kate is president of AMATYC this year. And last year, if I remember right, you chose 2 interesting years to be president of a national organization.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm sorry, my just right when we started, my program died. So give me a couple of seconds to just restore myself back up.
No worries. I can relate to technical difficulties.
Okay, so as Alan, and thank you, Alan, so much for inviting me to do this. But as Alan mentioned, I am the president of AMATYC. I also teach mathematics and statistics at Coconino Community College. I've been there for more years than I like to mention, and it's in Flagstaff, Arizona. I didn't get to mention what our temperatures are, but today is going to be a fairly warm day for us. We don't like 80 degrees, we don't like 90 degrees. So actually we're going to be a little bit cooler because we're going to be in the 80s today. I feel bad for the people in Portland. So what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit more about what AMATYC is. What AMATYC is about. AMATYC is, its mission is to be the leading voice and resources for excellence in mathematics education in the first 2 years of college. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that teachers and students get the best that they can out of their education. So we have many things that we do to help this happen. We have, I want to show you our website. And on our website, we happen to have lots of different information. First off, I do want to mention, as Alan mentioned, this has been 2 years as very difficult president of an organization. But we are going to have an in-person conference in Phoenix, Arizona, October 28th through the 31st of this year. So I'm hoping you can all come and be there with us. It'll be exciting. But we do have many other things that we offer. One of the things we do besides our conferences, we actually have committees and ANETs that we can organize and has different topics that you can talk about and share your frustrations or your comments about how you can do things better in your classes in these groups. Another thing is, of course, you can become a member of organization. We have other professional development opportunities we have. One of these is we offer many, besides our conferences, we offer webinars. We do 1 or 2 webinars a month. We also have these teaching tip videos that help you to see ways that you can improve your teaching in those areas. We also, for new teachers, we have Project Access, and also we have Project Slope, which is actually to get you to kind of get an idea of how to do student learning in a better and more involved atmosphere. The other thing we have are some publications, which I'm going to come back to. Another interesting thing is we have some student competitions that we can have. In our publications, we happen to have a journal that we put out every 3 times a year. We do a newsletter, which we put out 4 times a year. We have many position statements and different information you can go through. But what I want to do is talk about some of our publications we have. And what we also happen to have, and this is actually the most important one, is our impact document. Our impact document is part of our standards documents. It's improving mathematical prowess and college teaching. Prowess actually stands for proficiency, ownership, engagement, and student success. And so we're hearing more about this idea from Frank and Jennifer about that engagement and that ownership of our education. And so I want to talk a little bit more about it. That document is available on our website also. We also have an Impact Live, which is part of our online community, where you can go on to the Impact Live and you can actually post different comments and talk about different areas of where you are trying to do more engagement and ownership of your students and proficiency. Proficiency is not just about can they solve an equation or can they do a statistical process. It's making sure they understand those statistical processes. We happen to have in AMATYC, we happen to have a statistics resource page. We have lots of different pieces of mathematics, but since we're actually at USCOTS, I thought I'd just talk about the statistics research page. And that page is, we have many different pieces for that. We do webinars in that group. We have classroom resources. We have different papers and publications, and we have different pieces. This is put on by ASA and AMATYC Joint Committee that we have. So we have that information. I also am a member of the grant called Stat Prep, where we can actually have different ways of doing proficiency in that. We have different activities. We have the more important things that we have for students is we have little apps and little app activities, which allow you to do more engagement in your classrooms. So one of the things I can look at is we can do ownership, that idea that Frank was talking about, where we can do active learning in our classrooms. The AMATYC allows you to have some ownership. Engagement is one of our more important things. In that stats classroom resources, we have many different ways of where you can get some ideas to bring ownership into your classroom for you and your students. And we have other things we do with the STAT little apps. So I highly encourage you to look at different places so you can include and increase your student successes in your classroom. Thank you, USCOTS, for inviting me to be here.
Thanks very much, Kate. Next, we will hear from Maria Tackett. Maria's at Duke University. So if you want to stop sharing, Kate and Maria can share.
Trying to get to that point where I can do that. Sorry.
No worries, no worries.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, we'll sit with this mic. Great, so I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about some things I've learned about teaching statistics from taking a TAB class. So in a 2020 paper about the benefits of undergraduate research programs, the authors mentioned a few of these benefits that students said that they received from participating in such programs. And these benefits and these research programs are particularly impactful for students who came from backgrounds that are typically underrepresented in statistics. And so in thinking about this idea of expanding opportunities, for a variety of reasons, not all students have access or the opportunity to participate in these programs. And so one of the things I've been thinking about is how can we bring more of these benefits into the classroom where we reach a broader and more diverse group of students. And so I'm taking a recreational adult tap class. And so this is, for fun, for exercise, and to learn new skills, not to be a professional tap dancer, in the same way that we encounter a lot of students in our classes, who are there to fulfill requirements or to learn some skills, but maybe aren't necessarily there to be professional statisticians. But as I've been taking this class and experiencing it as a student, I've noticed that my instructor, Jean Medler, does a lot of things that makes me interested and motivated beyond just what we do for an hour a week. And so I wanted to share just a couple of those things and how that might look in a statistics classroom. And so Jean shares a lot of examples throughout class. And one thing I've noticed is when you kind of put the collection of the examples that he shares together, he's sharing examples that represent the diversity of the tap community. So whether that's identity of the dancers or their style or their experience, from professionals to students in the class, there's something there that as a student I can connect with when I understand what it means to be excellent in this tap community. And so similarly, as we think about our classroom, similar to some of the themes that Jennifer hit on, as we share examples, are we sharing examples that represent the diversity of identity when we talk about leaders and pioneers in our field, or different applications from, understanding coronavirus to top 100 Billboard music hits, or even experience? Are we sharing work not just from professionals and leaders in the field, but also from our students? And this idea that, through our examples, can we help all of our students see themselves and connect with some aspect of what it means to be excellent in statistics? So then kind of the other thing I've noticed, again, this is recreational, we're not there to be professionals, but Jean teaches us if he's preparing us for more. So we do exercises where he says, when you're in an audition, you'll need to know this, or when you're on stage, you need to know this. And even though being a professional isn't my goal, as a student, it helps me see a little bit what that might look like and gain my confidence in my ability to contribute to the broader TAP community outside of this class. I'm also too gaining skills that will just practically help me be prepared if I ever decided to, leave academia, join a TAP troop or something. And so again, kind of thinking about what that looks like in our statistics classrooms, what are some additional skills beyond the statistical concepts that we can teach our students to help them be prepared for opportunities beyond the classroom? And so whether that's, giving them lots of experience analyzing real world data, such as Gapminder data, giving them experience using modern computing skills like R, Python, or GitHub, to name a few. Or maybe it's we help them focus on communication and writing, whether that's academic writing or writing for a general audience, like in data journalism. And this will look different depending on our students and our context, but really thinking about what's that kind of additional or that extra skill where we can give students just a little bit more insight on what that might look like if they were to pursue a career, pursue statistics further, help them gain their confidence and their ability to contribute to the statistics community, whatever that looks like. But then also too, we're preparing a broader and more diverse group of students with those, real sort of practical skills to help them go further. And so again, these are just a few ideas and some things I've been thinking about as I take my TAP class. And hopefully this will help get the conversation started. And I look forward to more ideas as we continue talking about this idea of expanding opportunities throughout the week. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maria. I wish we had more than 5 minutes. I'd ask for a demonstration of what you're learning in your TAP class.
I almost brought my TAP shoes.
Maybe in Gather at some point this week, maybe in the X Bar. Next up will be Rebecca Wong. Rebecca teaches at West Valley College in Silicon Valley in California. Rebecca is also chair of the ASA AMATYC Joint Committee. Thank you, Rebecca.
Well, round two. Okay. I'd like to tell you the story of the transformation of my friend Needy's garden. Her nicely manicured California lawn has been replaced with an amazing garden where fruit trees, vegetables, and flowers all grow and flourish together. That was Needy's vision, a lush garden where all the plants grew together, and that's what she created. Needy's garden is a metaphor for our educational and professional spaces. Wouldn't it be a wonderful world if all those spaces were like Needy's garden, places where students and colleagues from diverse backgrounds learned and worked and grew and thrived together? But I think, if we're being honest, that isn't our reality. The theme of this conference, Expanding Opportunity, acknowledges that we have a way to go before our learning spaces model the rich diversity of Needy's garden. The image of our classrooms as gardens isn't new. You may have heard conversations about weeding out weaker, underprepared students. We hear that certain student groups avoid STEM fields because the work is too hard, too challenging. This quote challenges us to reframe our perspective. Do we really truly aspire to have a beautiful garden where plants of all kinds can flourish? Or do we want to maintain our neatly manicured lawns where some plants grow, others are weeded out, left to wither, or not planted at all? In this talk, I'm going to suggest 3 steps each of us can take to become a master gardener. Step number 1, prepare the soil. If we continue to do the same thing or make minor tweaks to our practice, we will never have a garden where plants of every shape, size, and color are flourishing together. So take a class, read a book, go to a lecture, learn. If we want transformative change, we need to learn from people outside our field. If we knew how to do this ourselves, our garden would already be thriving. Take a class from a critical race theory scholar, a workshop on allyship, a class on anti-racist pedagogy. Then talk with colleagues about how these ideas can expand opportunities in your educational and professional spaces. Step number 2, prune. Expanding opportunity is going to require change, and change can be hard and painful, but pruning enables new growth, new opportunities. As a result of what you learned preparing the soil, what specific impactful changes will you make? Without pruning, without transformational change, new growth and expanded opportunities are not possible. Step number 3, remember the ecosystem. At this conference, we represent all sectors of our educational system. As we engage in this transformational work, let's remember that we're all interconnected. We can and must help each other in this work. I'm going to take this opportunity to make a special plea on behalf of my colleagues who work in the community college system. The statistics data science major, and thus the field, will never become more diverse without working closely with the community colleges. The community college system enrolls 1/3 of all undergraduates in this country and the majority of undergraduates from marginalized groups. We play a key role in the educational ecosystem and thus a key role in the garden's transformation and success. Colleagues at 4-year colleges and universities, you could spark the transformation of our statistics courses by reviewing and updating articulation agreements to ensure that we are teaching courses aligned with the GAZE guidelines using modern data analysis tools. Right now, we are at a crossroads. The pandemic, the continued killing of unarmed Black people that have given rise to the Black Lives Matter movement, the resurgence